A South African violist has used music and art to explore the painful legacy of how labourers at wineries in the Western Cape province were for centuries given wine as part of a payment practice known as the Dop System. The system began at the time of slavery in the 17th century and persisted until the recent past, despite attempts to abolish it, causing high rates of alcoholism. Lynn Daphne Rudolph is the Mabel Quick International 2019 winner and winner of SA Strings Competition 2021. She's in studio for more on this discussion. Daphne, thanks so much for coming onto the show. Can you share your inspiration behind the show Dop System and how it aims to explore the painful legacy of the Dop System in South Africa?
Thank you, Hugo, for having me. So more about Dop System. As someone who is from the Western Cape and somebody who has been classified as coloured, I have experienced firsthand the effects of alcohol and the Dop System in the coloured community specifically. And I've also just witnessed how the legacy of alcoholism has continued to the present day, post-apartheid, so to say. And that inspired me to use my instrument and basically my skills as a classically trained violist, and also my interest as an activism in politics to mix those two together and use the colonial instrument and my classical background as a tool to express my sentiments and also just to highlight the pain that we still experience in South Africa.
So who's your audience? Because, I mean, you can speak to multiple audiences to put this information or expression across.
I think the audience, I'm still trying to figure that out. I occupy many communities, being a queer person, a non-binary person, a person of colour, indigenous in South Africa as well. And then also being classically trained, that means that my audience could potentially be older, usually European people. So what I also try to do in my work is that I try to not alienate the community, which I have found to be apparent within the classical community and industry. What I try to do is incorporate young, black, queer people to come to these spaces, to come to gallery spaces and allow for them to also share in the space. Because even if we have work by and for black artists or queer artists, that doesn't necessarily mean that the people who are affected by these atrocities are the ones who are feeling represented. So my role as an artist is to highlight these issues within the country and to sort of decolonize these spaces, that I don't only perform in concert halls, but that I perform in galleries and any space that also aligns with my values and ethos.
Now, you've talked about a first-hand experience around the Dop System. Talk to us about that.
My first-hand experience is of family members. It is my community, that there's always somebody who is an alcoholic, and that growing up being raised as coloured, and specifically non-black, that I have been told and sort of characterized that what it means to be coloured is to be violent and to be an alcoholic. And my experience with this has been that it is necessary for me to actually speak up and say something about this and not to just accept this as a status quo, that being a coloured means that you are always drunk or dronklap in colloquial terms, and violent. And I felt that that wasn't enough. As the Aboriginal people of this country, we need to have more discussions surrounding where this connotation with coloured people comes from, that it is not just something that was, carried on from no place, but that alcohol was a systemic tool of apartheid and colonialism.
Now, you were statement about the perception of being coloured on social media and the association with violence and alcoholism is powerful. Do you believe art can shape or reshape the perceptions around those stereotypes?
I absolutely believe that, for the reason that many people are afraid to engage in politics. For various reasons. I think that art offers a certain space where people are not necessarily confronted with it in a very hostile manner, and that it is something that we can engage with and have conversation around. That maybe many people don't feel comfortable to go to a protest or a rally or maybe sit into a forum, maybe that is too confrontational, but maybe the way that art presents itself is that it is a softer approach to politics, if that is what you use your art for, which I do, yeah.
Well, viola is obviously a it's not a bass guitar. So, so I'd imagine it's a lot less confrontational in its tone. Would you care to play something for us that we can listen to?
Sure. Right now?
Right now, please.
Right. Okay. Let me just stand up.
Of course, it's ukulele, if I got that correct.
Yes, and the stem.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So, this obviously is a fine art, I'd like to think. So let's talk about collaborations,
yes.
Because one way of, I think, with the fine art is it's an acquired taste. So what are the implications or the importance of collaborations to be able to reach multiple audiences, do you think?
I think on the point that it is an acquired taste, there is a rightful stigma and connotation made with classical music, that it is for an elite minority. And being a person of color, being a queer person, I occupy many minority spaces, and therefore classical music is not supposed to be where I am, or where the space is where I occupy. And because this is not the space that was created for me to be included in it, I said, well, you know what, I'll make a space for myself. And
has that been a hard process of making that space for yourself? I mean, have you had to knock gently, or has it been aggressive in order to be able to get into those spaces?
It's been extremely difficult. It's been very aggressive. I have been labeled as aggressive, confrontational, and rightfully so, because I believe that we need radical change for us to dismantle systems. We cannot approach dismantling and disruption of colonial systems which are still in place by gently knocking on somebody's door and asking, please, can you build a table for me or a seat for me? What I found is that I wasn't able to carve a space for myself in the spaces that I was occupying solely in the classical industry. And once I branched out of that, and once I seeked collaboration, which is also an African practice, once I went or sort of moved away from the individual to the community, that is where I found that it is actually possible to have these intersections. It's possible to be a fine artist who is also interested in politics, and to collaborate with visual artists, to collaborate with digital artists. That is essentially how I believe that we are able to dismantle and disrupt systems that will benefit all in South Africa.
Definitely appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having me.